Got it. Hello, everyone. This is Cornelius Chopin. I'm the owner of Rich Media Creative Services, the co-owner of the Adobe Users Group, along with Karen. Tonight, we're going to be talking about, we're going to cut to the chase, and we're going to be talking about smart objects. And we talked about it a little bit 2 months ago. What I want to do is give a quick review of what we talked about 2 months ago, and then pick up from there. So again, I'm going to cut right to the chase. And get started with a quick overview, and then we're going to get into some new and exciting, I may say, stuff when it comes to smart objects, which I love. I love smart objects. Smart objects been around for years. I mean, as far as I can remember. The thing is, people don't take advantage of it. But let me define what a smart object is before we get into it. What we spoke of last time we met is that a smart object is, in essence, the original file. Just think of the original file copied into another file called a PSB file. We're going to see that in our examples. Okay, that is used, and the reason for that is a file in a file. So you take the original and copy it and put it inside of the original, right? Or outside of the original, as the case of the inside and outside version of smart objects. But normally, most of the time, it's inside the same file. But the advantage of doing that is the key word here, it preserves the original bitmap or vector. You can do this with either bitmap or vector. We'll show you an example of what we did last time we met of that original file. Now you say, well, why would you want to copy a file in a file? You know, does that make sense, right? Well, the advantage of doing that is, let me just scroll down here, is that it preserves the image if you make any type of transformation. And we'll see an example of how we took an object, an image that is, and scale it up, down, up, down, up, down, and it didn't lose any of its resolution when we did it, right? It also helps you create comps. We saw some examples of that, and we'll review that real quickly. And it also helps you to update two versions of the same image. And that's what we're going to see tonight, how to do a reflection, how to do we call what I refer to as a smart object, if you will, a smart techniques, I should say, when it comes to using smart objects. So having said that, let me talk about the benefits of using smart objects. At least these are my smart, quote unquote, methods. First of all, we looked at smart transformation, right? So that's the reason why you want to take an object or image or layer, if you will, and convert it to a smart object, because you can do smart transformation. Transformation meaning when you scale it, rotate it, skew it, all of that fun stuff, right? And any kind of transformation, right, that you can perform, it'll be preserved if you use a smart object. And then smart mock-up. And we saw some example, the billboard and the coffee mug last time we met, right? Smart reflection, we're going to see that today. Smart instances, we'll see how that works. And then smart content, how you can swap out content if you use smart objects. So having said that, let's do a quick review of what we talked about last time. Remember last time we took an image of a person. This is the original background, but right here. And then we converted it, we duplicated it, and then converted it to a smart object. So we have two of these images. And then what we did was we put them side by side on the screen, and then we scaled it down, you know, do Control T and then scale it down, and then scale it back up. And we did that several times. And then when we commit that transformation, we can see that without a smart object, this is the example of both images not using a smart object. You can see that if you look closely, this image right here is blurry, right? Because it wasn't based off of a smart object. Well, we did the same thing again. We preserved that, and I don't have an example of where it preserved it. Actually, this is the preserved version right here of that smart object, because we encapsulate this in a smart object. So you do have both examples. This is because of a smart object. This is not, this is when we didn't use a smart object. So again, you're going to save yourself some headaches, or may save your client project, if you will, if you use smart object when it comes to transformation. Okay, and then we talked about another type of advantage, which I love, is comps. Oh, you've heard the term comps, short for composition. It helps you to create comps where you can map, that's the technical term, an image onto the surface of an object. In this case, a billboard. It could be a computer screen, iPhone, to name a picture frame, to name a few, right? And so you can literally map onto the surface of another object using smart object. Now, the key to remember, and this is, I can't overemphasize this, the key to remember when using it, because I've made this mistake, and I often tell my sons, don't make my mistake, right? Make your own. Learn from mine, though. Right? So learn from my mistake, make your own mistakes, right? So the key to smart objects, I often tell people, is always convert the whatever you're trying to do to a smarter object before, emphasis there, before you put it in perspective. So here we convert it to a smart object before we mapped it onto the surface. If you do it the other way, if you do this and then convert it to a smart object, it's not going to work, because believe me, I've tried it. Okay, so the key to most smart objects, in fact, all of them that I've come across, is do that smart object right up front before you do any type of transformation or any type of other editing process. And it's going to be easy. Anyway, we map that in there, and then you double click on that smart object to get inside of it. And then you can do whatever you want inside of the smart object. This is inside of the smart object right here. What happened? Move that back. Sorry for the scrolling. So this is what's inside of that smart object when we double click on it. And then when we get out of it, again, we'll see an example of this when we do the reflection. When we get out of that smart object, we made it inside, and emphasis there, again, it's on inside of the smart object. You could do stuff outside of the smart object that won't affect it. But when you go inside of it, that's where the magic begins. Okay. And then when we get outside of that smart object, it literally, even though it was square at the bottom here, when we first created it, it gets mapped as in perspective once we get outside of the smart object. So that's what we did the last time. And then we did another example where we took a coffee mug and then we converted this to a smart object, right? And then we went double click to get inside of it. And we added whatever we want, we transformed it, add some text. And then when we got out, notice that text got wrapped around that object. Okay, so we gave some examples of that. Again, this could be any object. So that's the good news, is you could do coffee mugs, any cylinder, can, I don't know, trash can, whatever object you want to map something onto as a comp or a composition. Magazine, books, articles, you name it. You can do this, and it's going to save you a lot of time when you have to update it to something else later. So that's good. Now, what we're going to talk about today is what I refer to as smart duplicates, right? The duplicating objects that can take advantage of smart objects functionality. And we'll look at that in just a minute. So with that in mind, let me move this back over to my other screen. And I'm open up Photoshop and show you how this works. And I'm gonna give you guys my senior citizen view there so you can see that better. And move this out of my way. Okay, so what I want to do is, first of all, I want to use my text tool, and I'm going to type in. I'm having the computer problems. It's giving me that beach ball icon. I hate that. Okay, wait for that to stop. Oh, look at that. I think I might have some computer issues. Bear with me. Okay, so shouldn't be doing that. Okay, there we go. So I'm gonna type in, I'm using a bold font called Impact because I often tell people it makes a impact on you. So I'm gonna type in Austin, your favorite city. Man, my computer is not acting right. I shouldn't It shouldn't be doing that. And I don't know if I have anything else open that might be causing it. So having some technical difficulties here. Come on. What is there? I might have to close out of Photoshop and get back in because this is obviously not working correctly. Let me do that because otherwise I'm gonna be all night forced quit. Because that is not working like it should. Okay. So let me get back into Photoshop and then we'll get started again. So I'm gonna just do Photoshop because I got several versions of Photoshop on my computer. Photoshop 2023. This is ridiculous. Okay, so hopefully this works better. Hopefully. Yeah, so here we go. So here we go. Now I'm gonna type in Austin, now all caps, AUSTIN, and I'm gonna use my move tool and I'm gonna move it into place. Okay, so that's the text. And then notice I have a text object, a text layer, I should say, right here. And you notice the text layer because it's gonna have that capital T against a gray background. That's important to note. Now what I'm gonna do though is, hold on a second, I got my little cheat sheet here. Make sure I don't miss anything. I'm gonna convert that. Remember, the first thing you always want to do is convert whatever you're trying to do to a smart object. Okay. Otherwise, if you don't, you're gonna miss the boat. And you don't want to miss the boat, right? So let's do that. So I'm gonna right click on that, right click on the layer that is, and convert to smart object. So when I click on that, notice if you should, I don't know if you paid attention, it went from a text object to a bitmap object. You guys see that? So now this thing is actually a bitmap image, if you can see that. I know, and again, and I know it's fairly small, but it says it's Austin in white, and it's a little checkerboard pattern. That's your dead giveaway. That's a transparent background. But remember, a moment ago, it was a T with a gray background, a text layer. Now it's a bitmap layer. Now the text layer is still there, but it's hidden, as we'll see, inside of the smart object. When we get there, we're going to see the text layers. It's still intact, if you will. But you notice a smart object, if you recall from the previous lesson, that you're going to have a smart object icon in the bottom corner, right corner of your thumbnail. So that's your dead giveaway that you have indeed a text object. So now that we have that, let's create another duplicate of this. Now, let me say this, and I say this all the time. I teach Photoshop. There are certain keyboard shortcuts that you need to know. I mean, if you're going to use Photoshop, for crying out loud, you need to know Control J, which is, let me do Control J, a command and control for you Mac lovers out there. Control J will duplicate a layer. So you need to know that. That's a given, right? I mean, always doing Control J. I do Control J every time I use Photoshop, I promise you. Okay, even if I'm just making a duplicate the original layer most of the time. Okay, so there you go, Control J, that's just a copy. See, it says copy of that layer. Okay, so it automatically added that word to it, which is a good thing. They didn't used to do that in the past. You had to kind of manually type that in. Okay, but I want this to be my reflection layer, right? So what I want to do is use Control T. Now, another shortcut key. If you're going to use Photoshop, I promise you, you're going to always be using this keyboard shortcut. And Control key, if you recall, is free transformation, right? Command and Control T, right? you can transform your object. Now you could do rotate, skew, perspective, warp, all kind of transformation, right? Well, all I want to do is flip. Okay, so I'm gonna right click and select flip vertically, right? And it just flipped it right on top of that other layer. Now I want to push it down. Now I'm gonna hold on the shift key. When you hold on the shift key, but before I do that, let me do just the down arrow. If I use the down arrow key, that line or that transformation only moves 1 pixel at a time, but you'd be there all day trying to get to it. If I hold on my shift key and then the down arrow, I can move 10 pixels at a time. And this is typical of most programs, if you will, being able to move 10 pixels instead of 1 pixel. You want to move it slightly below the existing layer, right? So creating that illusion, if you will, of a reflection. That's the term I'm looking for. Now I'm gonna double click to commit that transformation. You know it's not committed. If you go up here, you can see all your menu items, most of your menu items are dimmed out. That's a dead giveaway that you hadn't commit your transformation. Now there's 3 ways, if you recall, to commit your transformation. You can click on the checkbox up here. You can double click on the object itself that has that bounding box around it, or you can hit the enter key or the return key. Either one of those ways will commit that transformation, but you got to commit before you can submit to doing anything else. You like that? Okay, so there you have it. So now, obviously, that doesn't look too pretty of a reflection, but we're going to fix that problem in a minute. So what we have here is, this is what will become the reflection, right? And this is the text at the top. I want to flash it at you so you can see it. There's obviously you can see this one is upside down, and at the bottom, this one up at the top in the little thumbnail preview. Okay, both of them are smart object, and that's the key here. Let me overemphasize this, is when you create an object and you duplicate it, if you change anything inside, and again, the emphasis is on the word inside, of that smart object, it will automatically be reflected in the other object. Okay, so I can click on any one of these and do something to it. And then when I get out, you're going to see in a minute, those changes will be reflected in that other object. Now, notice I say inside of the smart object, because what we're going to be doing right now is going to apply another effect, but it's not inside of the object, it's on top of the object. It's what we call a gradient layer. So what I want to do is I want to put a gradient layer on that layer right there that I just flashed at you. So let's do that. So what I want to do is, what you don't want to do is hold on Command key and get a selection of that layer. That's not going to work for you. Okay, that's going to give you a black and white layer mask, not what you want. So I'm gonna do Control Z a couple of times to undo that. What I want is a completely white mask to work with. So to get a completely white or completely black mask, you don't want to have any selection. Okay, in this case, I don't have any selection now. So now when I click that same add layer mask icon at the bottom of the pile there, if you will, bottom of the layers panel, that is, it's going to create a completely white mask because there's no selection. Okay, I used to get confused about that. Well, why did sometimes it can read black and white, sometimes it's white? Well, it depends upon whether or not you have a selection, and y'all know the golden rule, right? Only what's selected gets affected by what you do next. So there you have, you got a completely white mask, but obviously that didn't do anything for me because remember the golden rule of masking, black conceals, white reveals. So it's completely white, so it's not doing anything for me because it's completely white. So I need some black, white, or in this case, I need gray in order for me to create what we call the illusion of a reflection. So let's put a gradient to the mix, if you will. So again, select not the image, but the thumbnail, the mask that is, because that's what I want to affect. And you know what selected gets affected. So I'm gonna select the gradient mask. I mean, the gradient tool, not the gradient mask, but the gradient tool. And I'm gonna go up to this drop-down list. I'm gonna go on the basic, and I'm gonna select the black and white option. Okay, it's actually black to gray. So when I do that, I can hold on the shift key. Now, as you know, if you hold on the shift key, it's gonna constrain it to a straight line. So if I hold on the shift key and I'm gonna click and drag from the bottom of this text object to the top of this text object. So I'm gonna click and drag from the bottom to the top and let the magic begin. Bam. Okay, now I have the illusion of a shadow, right? Now, if you want to, or if you need to, you may also want to soften that shadow. You could go to the opacity. I like to say T because in Adobe After Effects, the T key gives you the opacity. So I always like to say opacity to make that clear. But if you change the opacity, you can see you can soften that shadow if you need to. Depending upon the color of the image, the background color and whatever, you might want to soften it or push it, as it were, even further into the background. So there you have it, a nice reflection without much fuss. Now, that's not a big deal. You could have done that without a smart object, but this is where the magic begins, okay? And I know you did, most of you guys deal with clients, right? And how often does a client comes back and say to you, I want something else? I know that never happened to you guys, only me, right? Client, I don't want Austin, I want Dallas. Okay, that's what they say, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change this to Dallas. So I'm gonna double click again on any one of them, because I changed one, the other one would change, right? So I'm gonna double click on any one of these smart objects. And now this says Austin, right? Now look, there we go. We got our text layer that I spoke to you about earlier inside of the smart object. By the way, when you double click on that thumbnail, you open up another panel. Notice this is the original, right? The original layer. This is the smart object that got open when I double click on it. Now you see the text object, the text layer again inside of that smart object. Okay, so I want to change it from Austin to Texas. I mean, from Austin to Dallas, rather. So I'm gonna double click to select the text, right? And I'm gonna type in all caps, DALLAS, Dallas. Okay, now I'm gonna get out of the smart object. I'm inside of it, so I need to get outside of it. So I'm gonna come back up here and I'm gonna close it out, right? So I'm gonna close this tab. And why is it not letting me close it? There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna close this tab and then I'm gonna save it. So this is gonna close and gonna return to this one and let the magic begin. So if I hit save, bam. Okay, now what's wrong with that picture? Anybody? Not everybody all speak at once. What's wrong with that picture?
We're all muted. We can't all speak at once.
Okay,
we have to unmute ourselves. But I would say that what's wrong with it is that the reflection is directly underneath the letters and would look more natural if it was off at an angle, I think.
You could do that, by the way. You could do that, and then you see some reflection that's done that. Yes, I'll give you some 5 brownie points.
And there's also no source of light. Okay,
that's a good point, and we could add all of that. But the goal of this training is basically to focus on the advantage of using smart object. But you can add those features, if I can use that term, if you want. What I was focusing on mostly, though, is this S has been truncated right here. You guys, can you guys, let me zoom in.
Yes.
Can you guys see that's been chopped off right there? That's because the Dallas is larger than Austin when I was creating it, so it got truncated. So I need to go back into that smart object and correct that issue. So let's do that. So again, I can click on any one of those thumbnails, get back into, I can't overemphasize that, into that smart object and correct that problem. So I'm gonna double click again, and you can kind of see it right here. If I zoom in, can you see it being cut off right here? Now, there's a solution, a quick solution I may add for that. Let me go back out a little bit so I can, and let me zoom in just so you can see it better. I'm gonna go up here to the image, and there's an option that you may have never used called Reveal All. And guess what the Reveal All does? It reveals all, all the pixels. All what? All pixels, right? Watch what happened to this little corner right here when I select this option. Bam. Notice it expanded it so it reveals all of the pixels in that image. Now when I get out, that truncation at the end of Dallas will no longer be visible. So let's get out yet again. Remember how to do that. You click close, you save it, and you're going to save the smart object, and you're going to return, I like to use that term, back to the original image, and let's see the change reflected not only in the text, but also in the reflection. How cool is that? And therein lies the power of smart object. Yeah, so when I hit save, bam, now it's not truncated, okay? And so therein lies the power of smart objects, is that it allows you to create duplicates of the smart object, and you change one, okay, and this could be 3 smart objects, you know, or doing 3 different things, and then that can create that perspective. Now, again, as Karen noted, and I've seen this in websites, one of the things I'm gonna do when I create a YouTube video of this, you could put a perspective, and I could have done that, but just for the sake of time, I didn't. You could put a perspective on this shadow. You can tilt it left or right or whatever, you know, to give the illusion, everything is an illusion, right, of light being cast from a certain area. So anyway, but this is kind of just all I want to do for tonight. The goal here, the essence for you to remember is that when you duplicate a smart object, whatever changes you make to one will be reflected, no pun intended there, since I'm dealing with reflection, you know, like that, okay? Now, but you can also apply other effects outside, emphasis there, outside of the smart object. If I hold on the shift key and click on here, so I can turn off that gradient mask, and I'm stuck with just the reflection. Now, the reason why it looks a little bit pale at the bottom here is because, remember, we changed the opacity to this object earlier, right? So if I bump that back up, it's bright white again, right? And that's the reason why it's a little bit dim. If I hold my shift key again and click, this is how you enable or disable the layer mask, or mask, any kind of mask for that matter. And then you go back to, and remember, black conceals, right? White reveals. So white going to reveal that image, black will conceal the image, and anything in between will give you a semi-transparent version of the mask of that image that is underneath it. So there you have it. So that's number one. So let's look at another example. In this example, I'm going to take this butterfly and I'm going to duplicate it several times. First, I'm going to scale it down a little bit. So let me do Control T. Remember, that's your friend. Control T, Command T rather, Command and Control T. And I'm going to scale this thing down like so. You just put it there. I'm going to double click the commit. Remember that again. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is make duplicates of it. You know the key, all right? The key, right? Control J, that's your friend. And notice I'm making several copies or instances for you geeks out there of that butterfly. Now I'm gonna use my move tool because the golden rule is anytime you want to move something, use the move tool. How cool is that? And so I'm gonna move all of these objects just kind of randomly around the screen. And I'm also kind of, you know, do some other things. Do Control T. I'm gonna scale some of them up. I'm gonna rotate them. You know, I'm gonna maybe take and double click the commit. Take this one, do Control T, and then I'll tell you that's your friend. I'm gonna scale them down maybe, and then rotate them that way. You know, just to have fun and move them. Double click the commit, and let's do one more. Let's do Control T. Let's make him big. Let's see if I can. Maybe rotate him on an angle like that, or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Okay. Okay. I mean, I could have 100 of these butterflies flying on this, not flying, but on this canvas. I couldn't make them fly, by the way, but that's animated GIF. That's another class for another day. Okay. So anyway, I got these copies of the smart object on the screen. Now, watch what happens when I double click on any one of them, because remember, when you duplicate a smart object, oh, you know what I forgot to do? God, I'll get out of my haste. I forgot to convert it to a smart object. God, so I'm gonna have to do that over again. Apologize for that, you guys. I got a little excited and I forgot to do the very thing I told you don't do. So I'm gonna just hit the delete here. What I forgot to do, and as I told you to do, is you got to convert that to smart object first. So convert to smart object. Then I do Control J a couple times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do 4 times. And now I'm gonna move it again and rotate them and all that fun stuff. So I'm gonna do Control T, rotate, scale, move, double click, commit, Control T, your friend, scale, rotate it the other way. And that's good enough because it doesn't really matter. That's not the essence of what I'm communicating. But I got these butterflies doing different things, facing different directions. But they're all based off the same smart object. It was duplicate of the others, right? Now, watch what happens if I go inside of one of them and change some properties. So I'm gonna double click on any one of these smart objects, and I'm gonna use an adjustment layer just for the sake of time. And I'm gonna change the color because that's what you do with the hue saturation adjustment layer. So I'm gonna colorize this, and let's just see if we can change this thing to a different, maybe, oh, that's a pretty blue. So notice it was red, kind of red, now it's blue. Now, when I get out of this smart object, remember again, I'm inside of it, right? When I get outside of this smart object to return, and that's important to note, you in this what is it called? PSB, that's not a Photoshop, that's not a PSD, right? This is a PSD, this is a PSB, B for big, right? Because you make the file big because you include another file in it, okay? Now, when I get out, so I'm gonna do a close as usual, and click save as usual, and watch what happens to this file. So click OK, bam, they all change to blue. Now, this is akin to, remember back in the old days of Flash, we had symbols. You update one symbol and all the other instances of that symbol got updated accordingly. Or for you web developers, CSS, you change one instance of a heading, all the instances of the heading get updated, right? Because it's based off a cascading style sheet. Now, so that is when you duplicate an object. Now, let's do something a little bit slightly different. What if your client came to you and said, you know, that's nice. I like that blue butterfly, but I want one of them to stand out. So I want you to change one of them. Well, you can do that with a smart object, but this time, instead of converting it to a smart object, we're gonna do something slightly different, as you'll see in a minute. So what I'm gonna do is, with this top layer, I'm gonna right click, by the way, let me see which layer that is. That's that one right there, I'm flashing it at you. I'm gonna not convert to smart object, I'm gonna convert new smart object, okay? So I'm creating a smart object, but via, the key word here is via copy, or the phrase, via copy, not via instance, if you will, I guess with the term you could use for this one, but this is via copy. So let's do that. Now notice it created a copy of this layer, right? So, and then if I move it over, you can see it's right there, okay? So now watch what happens when I try to go inside of that smart object, change its properties, and see what happens when I get out. So let's double click, as you know, that's how you get in it. Double click on the thumbnail, I'm inside of it, see it's still red there. And this is the adjustment layer, so I can easily adjust it. So it's blue, let's see if we can make it green. Okay, how about that? Okay, and now we're gonna get out, close. How many times have I done this in the last 10 minutes? Hit save, bam. Only that instance of that smart object got changed, and not all of them as in the previous example. Somebody got their hand raised. Can you speak up, Karen? Is it Karen?
Yeah. I have a couple of questions about this.
Okay.
Now that you've just completed that, can you now adjust them all universally, even though one of them is a different color?
That's a good question. No, you can't, because once you sever, that's a key word, right? That relationship. If I change, let me do that. Let me change this to another color just to show you that. So if I turn that to, and again, I'm just changing it to a darker color. It doesn't really matter, right? Now, when I go back out and save it, they all, because this one is based off of a copy. It's still a smart object. You can see right there, the smart object icon, but this relationship was severed or cut, right? Because I did new layer via copy instead of convert to new layer. Good question though.
And the other question that I had before was, I remember that Adobe had a product, it might have been Lightroom, I'm not sure.
Oh, I remember Lightroom.
Where you could spray objects like wallpaper?
That's in Illustrator now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I use that quite a bit.
But what you were doing now with the copying the smart objects and having them be linked seemed a lot like
Yeah,
if you
it's
wanted a swarm of
somewhat like that, but
butterflies,
you're
you
not
could spray
spraying
them.
them. You got to manually
Okay,
spray them.
I got it. Okay, you have to hatch them one at a time.
Right. Yeah, you got to hash them. You got to hash them instead of spraying them. No,
Yeah,
the
right.
Illustrator has that feature. It's a spray brush, I believe, and you can literally paint grass, paint trees, or any
Yes, yes,
simple.
yes.
Yeah, you can literally paint. That's in Illustrator, though.
Oh, right. Maybe we should have a demo of that sometime.
Yeah, we could.
That'd
Okay,
be
so
fun.
now let's look at another example in the time that remains. And this is my favorite. I saved my favorite for last. I love this example. And this is really good. So I have a picture frame here. And let me zoom in because I know Cameron would appreciate that. So I got a picture frame, but I want to put in some models of various different pictures. Some models of various models into this frame, but I don't want to constantly redo it over and over and over and over again. Okay, so let's see how to do that with smart objects. Okay, so first thing I want to do is I got this object here, this picture frame. So I want to create a what I want to make out of a smart object. So I want to make a selection first. So let me go to my selection tool, the quick select tool. And again, whatever selection tool is necessary for this job. I know the quick select is going to select this inside of this frame, if you will. So again, I'm going to my friend, Control J. I'm telling you, you got to learn Control J. If you're going to learn Photoshop, I promise you, you're going to be using, at least I do. Maybe you may not have to do it. But believe me, I use Control J and Control T all the time. Okay? So Control J, and even just in this little exercise, I probably use at least a half a dozen, if not more times, right? So I'm doing Control J, you know what that does. Now, because I made a selection, golden rule is only what's selected gets affected. The whole layer won't be duplicated. Only the selection will be duplicated to a new layer. So when I do Control J, notice just the selection was duplicated and not the whole layer. Okay, again, only what's selected gets affected. So, and then I want to just change it. I don't have to do this, but maybe I want to just kind of make this a different background. So I'm gonna do Control. I'm gonna hold on the Command key and click on this to get to a selection of that layer, and then I'm gonna give it that background color right there, that green. Now you do that, you do Command and Control and backspace. Okay, that's another shortcut key that you may want to memorize for Photoshop, because I use that all the time. So Command and Control and backspace, bam. Notice I fill that selection with that color. Okay, now that I have that, I want to convert this to a smart object before I add my layer mask to it. Okay, so I'm gonna add a layer
Excuse
mask.
me, Cornelius, what is backspace?
Did I say backspace? Command and
Yes.
Control, Command and Control delete, I should have said. Thanks for that correction.
I'm sorry, but that was, would you mind just repeating how you got that green in there?
Yeah, so let me do Command and Control Z to undo it. So I got a selection, so only what's selecting gonna get affected by this layer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a whole lot of Command and Control key and the backspace, not backspace, the delete key. I keep wanting to say backspace.
Oh, that's what that's what
Delete
me.
key.
Thank you.
I say backspace, and that's my.
Yes.
I think you could use the back key on PC, but it's delete. Okay.
Okay.
And that's
Thank
going to
you.
give you the background color. But thanks for that correction, by the way. So now I want to make this a smart object. Now that I still have it select, before I do that, let me do Command and Control D to deselect that. I'm gonna make this a smart object. So right click, and I'm gonna do convert to smart object, and you can see it's a smart object now. Now what I want to do is add a layer mask to it. Okay. But I need to get a selection, otherwise it's going to be affecting the whole layer, right? So again, the Command and Control key, anytime you want to get a selection of an object with a thumbnail that has background transparency, if you hold on the Command key, and I'm going to flash it at you, you see a little, selection icon with the hand, selection icon below the hand, that means it's going to make a selection for me. So if you hold on the Command and Control key and click, find yourself a thumbnail to click on, and you probably get to a selection easily without having to use all kind of selection tools.
So your
Big
cursor
time saver.
turns into a hand when it's hovering over something it can.
Right, not only a hand,
transform.
but look, that's a hand, that's a regular cursor. If I hold
Right.
on my Command key, let me flash it at you. You see it's showing you that little reflection? Well, let me get it. You see that? Look, I can move it out. You see it? There, you see it?
I see a little box.
Right, it's probably hard to see because it's a little small.
It looks like a hand with wearing a cuff.
Right,
square cuff.
where there's a little box with a little dash box that denotes
Right.
a reflection. I mean, a selection rather. Right.
And
So
what does the box signify?
A selection. That is when you do this. When you look, this is like doing this, right? That's that little icon at the bottom of that hand is a dash line, what we call the marching ants, right?
Yes.
Right. That's what you see at the bottom of that icon when you click on it. So let me Command D to deselect that selection, and then I'm gonna do Command, and then again I'm gonna flash it so you can see it. Now when I click on it, it gives me that selection automatically without much fuss, which is always good. Now that I have that, I want to make a layer mask. I'm gonna click down at the bottom here, click, bam. And because I have a selection, now I get not a purely white layer mask, but I get a black and white layer mask, which is good. Now, what I need to be careful of is because I'm gonna put the image that I'm gonna be swapping out into this image and not the mask. By the way, when you create a layer mask, you can think of this on top of this mask, on top of this image rather, and they move together. Now, if you want to sever that relationship, there's a little light lock icon right there in the middle there. We want to deselect that. So when I make any changes to this, the mask won't move with it, which can cause problems. Okay. I don't want the mask to move. I just want the image to move. You'll see that become apparent in just a minute. So now that I have that template, if you will, blank template in place, let's go in and swap it out, keyword there, with something else. Now watch what happens. I'm gonna right click on the layer, not the thumbnail, but the layer, and I'm gonna select replace content and let the magic begin. So replace content opens up a dialog box, and I need to go and find it on my computer. Exercise file. And I got these models. Okay, so that's the first one. You've seen her before. So I'm gonna click OK, and bam, it puts that model. It replaced that image with this model. And you can see it's way big in this thumbnail. You can only see a little bit of her inside of this frame. So I need to do my friend again. You know, I have all these digital friends, don't I? I'm gonna do Command T, right? And that's how you get to free transformation tool, remember? And I'm gonna hold on the the Option or the Alt key, Alt or Option key, depending upon the Mac or the PC. And that basically, when you're scaling something, it scales from the center. When you hold on the Option or Alt key. So I'm gonna hold on my Option key, I'm on a Mac, and then I'm gonna scale, and notice I can scale. Now, if I go too far, obviously that wouldn't look too good, right? But if I scale it up to, you can see the image is masked behind that layer mask. That image is still there. It's just being masked, as the term, behind that. Now, obviously, you don't want to go beyond that because then we give away the illusion, right? So I'm going to make it where it fits nicely inside of that frame. No pun intended there, because that is a frame, isn't it? And then I'm going to double click to commit and let the magic begin. Okay, so now, what if the client come back? Actually, what you could do is you could take this, print it out, right? Or save it as a file or whatever you want. Then you want to bring in another model because you had a photo shoot of these different models, right? So you want to bring in the other model. Okay, so let's do that. So you got those in a file somewhere. You saw that folder that I just opened up. So let's swap that out without having to reinvent the wheel again with, creating a layer mask, and all that craziness, right? All we need to do is swap, or what we call replace the content for you geeks, the image in this layer. So let's do that again. And then you got to right click on the layer and not the thumbnail. Replace content. And I'm going to select, and notice I got 4 models. So I'm going to do all 4 of them because this a reason for my madness in a minute. You see that? Okay, so I got this model. Well, by the way, I see her everywhere. She must be really popular because every website has her. So it must be a free, actually it is, a free, royalty free image because everybody uses her, okay? Then I click place again. Bam. Now she came in fine because if I do Control T, she's nice, you know, she's kind of right there in the image, right there behind the mask, literally, right? I didn't have to scale her or anything. Now, let's do another one to show you what happens if you bring in a really small image or a really big image. So I kind of gave you different scenario of what you might have to do when you have images that you bring in. So let's bring in another image. By the way, so you take this image, save it as a file or print it out or whatever, a combination thereof, right? Let's bring in another model. Let's bring in a third model because you did a model shoot, right? So this is the third model. Now she's going to come in rather small. And I did that purposely to illustrate. Some things are best explained through demonstration or illustration, right? So place that. Now look, she came in small. So again, I got to do what? Command T, your friend. Command T. How many times have I done Command T just tonight, for crying out loud, right? And then I'm holding on my Alt key or the Option key for you, you Windows person, people out there. And then I'm gonna scale it up. Now again, I can scale it up big, right? Wouldn't make sense. But you want to scale it to kind of fit behind, literally, that image, and you know you can go big or small depending upon the image itself. But obviously, you wouldn't want it like that because then you don't want to cut a waist in half, right? That wouldn't look good. So you want to put it where it fits literally inside of that frame. Okay, and so there you have it. So let's do it one more time and see what happens. So now I'm gonna open up another image. Again, remember, right click on the layer, select replace content. This time, this is the fourth model. Now she's gonna come in really, 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 did I say really? Really big, okay? So watch when I hit replace, bam. Now, only thing I'm seeing on her, I don't know if you can see this right here in this image, I'm just seeing this is a small portion of her, right? Because she came in really, really big, right? Well, the question is, well, how do I get to, if I do Control T, it's like, man, she outside of the boundaries of my screen, my Photoshop canvas, or beyond the canvas, literally. So how do I get to those handles that I need to pull it in so I can make her smaller? Well, your friend, just like in a browser, or any browser, whether it be Opera, I don't know about anybody use Opera anymore, Firefox, what we use on a Mac, Safari, help me out, Edge, Microsoft, whatever. I don't like Microsoft stuff. But anyway, I digress. If you could hold on, Command Control key and 0, watch what happens. Pay attention to that blue box that you see. Command and Control and 0, a Z, okay, bam. Notice that it made the canvas smaller, but now I can see the edges of that bounding box, right? So now I can hold on my Option key as usual, and I can just pull it in and bam. Now, obviously I want to commit that, and then I want to make it bigger so you can see that better. How you like that? And then you have it, life is good. So you can see I could print those out as separate JPEG files or send them to the printer or a combination thereof. And there you have it. And I got 1 minute to answer questions. That concludes my presentation. I hope you guys got something from that. Any questions?
No questions. Bravo.
Was that good or not?
That was fantastic. I'm going to stop the recording.